What if I tell you the glorious Rome we praise today was once a hell for its women? Yes. Imagine Rome at the height of its glory. White marble temples glowing under the sun, senators strolling through grand columns, and servants carrying news from house to house as fast as whispers could fly. Noble families lived in luxury, but they also lived under constant watch. Appearances meant everything. Reputation could build an empire, and one rumor could bring it crashing down. This was the world of Appuleia Varilla. She was no ordinary Roman woman. She belonged to a powerful family, connected by blood to the imperial household. On the outside, her world looked secure and enviable. Yet for noblewomen like her, freedom was an illusion. Her body, marriage, and even emotions were never truly her own. They belonged to her family, her husband, and to Rome itself. So when rumors began that she had taken a lover, the city didn't simply whisper. It reacted. Because in Rome, love, especially a woman's love, could become a public crime. Let's switch back in time to the Lex Julia, when love became law. To understand why Appuleia Varilla was brought to trial, we need to understand the law that judged her. It was called Lex Julia, created under Emperor Augustus. On the surface, this law claimed to protect marriage and moral behavior. But beneath the surface, it was about control. Roman marriages among noble families were not romantic partnerships. They were political agreements designed to build alliances, strengthen wealth, and secure social rank. A wife was expected to ensure children who would continue the family name and inherit the family's property. If there was uncertainty about the father of a child, family lines, inheritances, and political stability could fall apart. So Lex Julia turned adultery from a personal mistake into a public crime. And the most striking part was that the woman's own father or husband was expected to bring charges against her. The law turned the family into the enforcer. It replaced affection with surveillance. A daughter or wife could be adored, but she was also monitored. But first, let's have a look at who was Appuleia Varilla. Appuleia Varilla belonged to one of the most powerful families in Rome. Her great-uncle was Emperor Augustus himself. Because of this, she was expected to behave flawlessly and honorably at all times. Her marriage, like others among the noble class, was meant to maintain power between two important families. Yet, despite all this formality and pressure, Appuleia was still human. She lived in a world where a woman's happiness didn't matter as much as her obedience. No one recorded her feelings. No one asked her what she wanted. But we know this much. Something in her life led to whispers. Gossip began to spread that she had taken a lover. More dangerously, people said she spoke poorly of the imperial family, something considered close to treason. Even though the accusations may have started as gossip, gossip was often enough to bring a woman to trial in Rome. Yes, no proofs, no justification. Mere gossip and rumors could take women to the courtroom. And the trial? A public judgment of private life. The courtroom must have been tense that day. Important officials gathered. The public murmured, just as you see in some ancient Roman movie. Court scribes stood ready to carve history into record. Appuleia Varilla stood in the center, her fate hanging in the air. Two charges were brought against her: adultery and insulting the imperial household. The second charge could have led to execution, as insulting the emperor's family was considered a very serious offense. But the emperor at the time, Tiberius, ordered that she not be tried for treason. He allowed that charge to be dropped. It may have been a political calculation rather than mercy. That left the charge of adultery. Under Lex Julia, this was still enough to destroy her life. The question in court was not whether she felt love or loneliness or pain. Emotions, feelings did not matter at all. The only question was whether she had broken her loyalty to her husband. And for that, the punishment was exile. And it was not considered just an average punishment. It was something humongous, something that will send shivers down the public's spine. Everyone was afraid of this punishment if it were a plague. Why was it so scary? Let's look at Exile as a silent punishment. Exile in ancient Rome was a punishment that took away everything except life itself. Those sent into exile were removed from all public life. They could not visit temples, attend celebrations, appear at gatherings, or even set foot in the city. Their property could be taken. Their names could be erased from the social world they once belonged to. Imagine growing up surrounded by marble halls, servants, silk curtains, and endless conversations, and now living on a quiet island, cut away from every relationship and influence you once had. There would be no more grand dinners, no festivals, no voice in the world you once knew. Appuleia Varilla was not executed, but the life she had known was gone forever. To be honest, exile was a more painful punishment than being executed. Living a life that doesn't feel like living anymore is the worst nightmare one can experience. How the law was used. Appuleia's story was not unique. Many high-status women were punished the same way. Even the emperor's own daughters were not an exception. Augustus exiled his own daughter, Julia the Elder, under the same law. Later, Julia's daughter would also be exiled on similar accusations. Even the poet Ovid was exiled, not for committing adultery, but for writing poetry that authorities believed encouraged it. Yes, just a simple literary piece of work caused his exile from Roman life. So the law was not only about protecting marriage, it was a tool of control. It was used to silence women who were too independent, too admired, too outspoken, or simply inconvenient to political agendas. Rome believed order mattered more than emotion, and women's emotions were considered especially dangerous because they could shift alliances and weaken male authority. The human truth beneath the law. But let's step away from the law and think about the people. Appuleia Varilla was likely raised to be graceful, quiet, and obedient. She knew how to walk, how to speak, how to behave in public. She knew that others watched her, yet she still ended up accused and cast out. Was she in love? Was she lonely? Did she simply want to feel seen? We will never know. History wrote her sentence, but not her heart. And that might be the saddest part. She was not judged as a person, only as a symbol of what Rome feared. Why her story still matters. Even though centuries have passed, the ideas behind this story haven't fully disappeared. There are still places where a woman's reputation is seen as her family's property. There are still situations where a man is allowed to decide how a woman should behave. There are still moments where love is treated as something to be controlled, not chosen. History echoes. It never disappears. When Appuleia Varilla was led away from Rome, she likely turned to look back one last time. The city that had raised her, celebrated her, judged her, and discarded her, went on without her. Life continued. Markets opened. Senators debated. The world did not pause for her heartbreak, but her story remains. A reminder of how deeply the law can shape love. A reminder of how power can disguise itself as morality. A reminder that freedom of the heart has not always been free. Maybe she was not guilty. Maybe it was all a rumor. But she was judged on the basis of accusations. Nobody dared to speak for her, because if they did, they might also be exiled with her. That was your sparkling, glorious Rome, which still shouts glory in the bookshelves of renowned libraries. But the dark side is even darker than the word dark itself. If this story helped you see history more humanly, remember to like, share, and subscribe. I bring forgotten women's stories to life. Stories where real people loved, lost, fought, and survived behind the grand walls of history. Because the past isn't silent. It still speaks. See you in the next episode.